Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest news in college football, I don't want to say history, but in our lifetime, probably just...
You could argue history.
I mean, yeah, you could.
You could argue it. I mean, I don't think it's much of an argument that...
Our lifetime, for sure.
Yeah.
Nick Saban retiring at the University of Alabama. I mean, there is no arguing he's the greatest college football coach of all
that's
time.
that's what I was getting to, but I
And-
knew we hadn't officially said what we were doing the video on. But yeah, there's not an argument. Greatest college football coach of all time.
I mean, and as Mississippi State fans, obviously we've always hated them because, it's Alabama, but respect the heck out of them. There's nobody who's ever done anything close to what he's done. Historic coach. Sorry. We wish him all the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just when you sit back and look at what he's done, it's absurd that one guy was able to do all of that. And congratulations on a great career. But unfortunately, college football is a nonstop machine, so we can't sit back and look at Nick Saban's career too much because we got to talk about who the next guy is and who is going to be the next coach to carry on the dynasty that is Alabama.
Yeah.
And if they can get a coach who can do and continue the success that Saban has had, if that's even possible. We'll talk about multiple candidates, but first, JJ, your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think you covered the Nick Saban thing pretty well. So now we're gonna transitioning into what's gonna be next for Alabama and their football program. And on that, first, let's say this: I think if they really wanted it, there's almost anybody in college football, and even some professional coaches that they could get if they wanted it.
Yeah, for sure.
But also, as a somebody that's going into coaching, stuff like that, they might have a much harder time getting who they want than people think, because I personally would not want to be the person that comes in behind Saban.
Absolutely not.
That is whoever comes in is most likely set up for failure, honestly. Because, yes, you've still got the great facilities, you've got the support at Alabama, well, arguably. If this thing starts to even go slightly south, that support's going to be nowhere to be found again. So, I mean, yes, in one hand it's Alabama, but I would say more than anywhere in the country at this point, having to replace Saban, if you lose 2 games your first year, you're on the hot seat. And then if you lose more than 2 games, which I could argue is...
You might get fired.
Yes, and then I would argue that your most... even if Nick Saban was the coach at Alabama next year, this is the most likely any Alabama team in the past had been to lose more than 2 games. Just because of how the SEC's being set up now. Just the SEC regular season in general, you add 2 top 25 teams every year, as well as kind of jumbling up, taking away divisions, jumbling up how scheduling works. Most of these SEC schedules that we look at, from when we were looking at teams or anything like that, we looked at almost every single one of them and went, ooh, there's 3 or 4 games that could be losses. Like, we looked at Georgia for next year and said, there are 3 games on this schedule that they could lose.
Potentially lose that.
Or
not guaranteed wins.
Right.
We haven't said that. I don't think there's been a season where we've said this is a game Georgia could lose in the past 2 years.
So, I'll be honest. I would say even with Saban, Alabama is in a place where they could lose 2 games next year. And so, whoever is moving to Alabama, if they're in a good spot, think long and hard about making that jump, because if you lose 2 or 3 games, you're in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Which is not right, but with the fair weather support that Alabama has, I mean,
you haven't won a chip in 3 seasons now, too.
There were Alabama fans talking about firing Saban after they lost that Texas game. If they were talking about that, some new guy that comes in, you know, so we'll see. Because, like I said, they're still Alabama, and a new coach could still come in and succeed.
Absolutely.
But I would bet more likely than not, it would not surprise me. I wouldn't say I would bet, but it would not surprise me if Alabama's looking for another coach in 3 or 4 years max.
It wouldn't surprise me either. But it really just depends on who you go get. And I mean, commits are decommitting. They've already seen 3 today. Shador is recruiting Alabama players to Colorado as we speak. And you wonder, with the state that college football is right now, how many Alabama players are going to stay with the Tide. Because one, I mean, they've had so much depth over the years that your 4- and 5-star backups might transfer out to go play somewhere else. And now you got guys starting who came to play for Saban. And I guess, we'll see who they go and hire. It's probably the most sought-after job in college football. But at the same time, there's so much pressure with that.
Yeah.
And
at the same time, these coaches that are in good spots to be consistent playoff teams are going to think twice about taking this job because of being the guy to replace Saban. Yeah. The time to take this job would be after this next guy gets fired.
Yeah.
But
they could hire a guy who doesn't, who does succeed and wins games.
Yes.
So
it's not a foregone conclusion that this next guy will fail.
Yeah.
I would say it is at least just as likely that he will fail than that he will succeed. And not necessarily that he will fail on a normal standard. But once again, having to come in behind that Saban standard, the Saban dynasty, Alabama fan standards are going to be up here, whereas they should be here.
Yeah.
I
would say that.
Right underneath it at this point. So, I think we could see them land a huge fish.
Yeah. Which you will see them land a huge fish.
Yeah, but it might not be the top first or second choice guy that they wanted. It might be the 3rd or 4th guy on their list. Because, let's talk about this. A lot of the names that we're seeing. So, the top 3, I think that I have seen, and that from what I saw, the original betting odds that came out on who's going to be the coach, you had Dan Lanning had the best odds. I think at 3-1 or something like that. And then the next 2 right behind it are Dabo Swinney and Lane Kiffin. Okay,
I saw, his name is in my head, Washington's coach.
Kellen DeBoer was 4 or 5.
I saw him at 3 on the post I looked at, but Dan Lanning and Dabo were the first 2. I saw DeBoer.
Dan Lanning, DeBoer, Dabo, in that list that I saw, they had Dion at 6.
I saw Dion. Which he's not leaving Colorado, I don't think. I saw Lane. I saw James Franklin.
Yeah.
I don't think they should hire. Sarkisian was on the list that I saw.
But all right, let's just go with those names.
Yeah.
Because I think those are kind of the most common. Those 6 or 7 we just named.
Sure.
I will address some of the crazy ones first. Bill Belichick's not coming to Alabama.
No.
He may not be the coach of the Patriots next year, but he's not going to college football.
He may retire.
He will either retire or find another NFL team.
I think he's going to retire.
He's not coming to Alabama. You mentioned Andy Reid earlier that you had seen that somewhere. That ain't happening.
I don't think it's happening. I was laughing at that.
Yeah, I know.
Because I was
stuff like that. That's not happening.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I don't see them pulling a pro coach. It could happen, but you got to be 2 different types of coaches in the pros and in college.
Saban, greatest college football coach of all time, didn't work out.
Yeah.
In the pros, it's 2 different styles of football.
2 different styles of football, but even more than that, you've got the recruiting aspect in college football that the coach doesn't have most of the time to put a team together in the pros.
Yeah.
So you've got both of those things that some guys just like the pros better, and some guys are more successful at college. That's how it is. So let's look at some of those college names we threw out. I've got the kind of 2 out of all those that I think are most likely, but let's just run down the list and kind of talk about them.
Yeah.
All right, so
start with Lanning.
Yeah,
Well, you know how I feel about Dan Lanning when he was one of the names for the A&M job. He's my favorite coach in college football besides Jeff Levy now, just because he's State's coach, so I have to be supportive. And if he came to the SEC, I might cry because I don't want to have to root against this guy.
Yeah.
Because I love Dan Lanning, and I honestly think he's the best option for Alabama if you want to get continued success. Only issue with him though is he has signed a transfer class this year that I think could boost Oregon to potentially a Big Ten championship in year one there. And I don't know if he wants to leave a situation where you have fan support, you don't have to win. Excuse me. You don't have to win the Big Ten championship every year to keep your job. You get all the Nike benefits.
Right.
So he might not want to leave that job, and I hope he doesn't, because I don't want to root against Dan Lanning. But I think that's the best option for Alabama.
Yeah.
To succeed, right? Like to have the guy who's going to be there for the next 10 years and win.
Yeah. So yeah, right on with that. Dan Lanning, I said there were two that I thought are most likely. He's one of them. Yeah. I think he's a guy that does want to get back in the SEC. I don't really have a whole lot outside of that. I think looking at it from Alabama's side, you're right. He is one of their best options at this point. Maybe the top option for them, in my opinion. But for one, all those benefits you talked about at Oregon, all the things I talked about earlier with Alabama, is he going to want to leave Oregon to come to Alabama and, be held at such a high standard when he's already in a great place where he is? That's the question that all of these coaches are going to have to ask, really, that we're talking about. So, yeah, I do think that one is legit and, will be talked about. I think that's much more likely than the A&M job ever was with him.
Sure.
But just imagine the Georgia-Alabama rivalry and how it continues if Dan Lanning takes this job.
Unreal, man.
I was thinking about that earlier. But, yeah, so we'll go to that second name I mentioned, Dabo.
I think there was a time, we look at it maybe 3 years ago, where when people thought Saban could be retiring.
3 years ago, if Saban retired, Dabo would have already been hired.
Yeah, absolutely. It's where he played. Did he play? He played.
I know he went there.
Yeah, I know he went there. I don't know if he was a football player, but he went there. He's from Alabama. He's a guy that I think wants the job, but does Alabama even give him a look after the recent years Clemson has had in the ACC?
Yeah.
Clemson is a program that should win the ACC every single year, given the state of that conference. And if you're not, I don't think there's going to be a lot of fan support behind Dabo anymore.
Yeah. The fan support already behind Dabo is at zero. I saw a video earlier of Alabama students already outside Bryant Denny chanting anybody but Dabo.
Yeah.
And not like 3 or 4 people. It was like 30 to 40.
Yeah.
I think Dabo would be a good option for Alabama, honestly. But I think at this point, Alabama can't make their fans that mad. And if I'm Dabo, kind of like Mark Stoops when he almost went to A&M, if they're already reacting like that, you're going to fail at that point.
If you lose one game,
if you lose a game, you're
out.
done for.
Yeah.
So I think Dabo is a good coach.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the heat that he's gotten over the past few years has been kind of unwarranted because when you look at it historically, Clemson is a program that is a fringe top 25 program until he gets there. They go on that 4 or 5 year stretch where they were amazing, and now they're just a good team that I think in some years will once again be a very good team.
Early. It's way too early, but we predicted them to win the ACC this year.
So I think in a lot of ways the expectations for him at Clemson are a little high, and you saw him in press conferences get a little frustrated with that. But yeah, I think that that won't be the hire. But
I don't think there's just no fan support.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Is like A&M, their best option was Mark Stoops. Their fans threw such a hissy fit.
Which is ridiculous.
I don't know why.
I'll say this about that real quick because that's not the topic of this video, but I've been wanting to say it for a long time. Mark Stoops with the resources is scary.
Yeah.
With what he's done at Kentucky, I mean that's the better hire than
That's the better hire than the Mike Elko hire, and the Mike Elko hire was a decent,
but
pretty good hire.
He's not going to do better than Jimbo. He'll be fired in 3 years.
So
I don't get that, but that's not
that. You would have this situation in Alabama where, Dabo would probably be
guest star Colton Merchant. This just in: Nick Saban is retired. What?
Why are you all over me?
I just wanted to make that known.
Nick Saban retired?
I think that's crazy.
It's
not
crazy.
really. He was senile already, so
Senile? I don't think he was senile.
he was getting old.
He was getting old, but he
He was
wasn't
getting
senile.
old.
I love you, Colton.
I love you too. Y'all keep up the good work.
Thank you.
what was I saying?
Dabo.
Dabo would, I think, be a good coach for Alabama, but with the already waning fan support, whoever this next guy is going to be put under a microscope, and I just don't think for either party at this point that's the best option.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So the third name I mentioned is the second guy that I think is most likely to take the job, Lane Kiffin.
This is the one. See, I see this the most as the most likely.
I see this as the most likely. Dan Lanning is the better option.
I agree with that.
But I think Lanning is much smarter than Kiffin period. But
Ole Miss fans are gonna say we're just being homers, which we're not. It's true. But it's
so he will look at his situation and be like, I'm good in my spot. I'll pass on this and maybe take it when they fire this next guy. Whereas if Kiffin gets offered this job, he's gone.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was, whether or not fans want to admit it or not, he was wanting that Auburn job last year. We saw what happened at Tennessee. It's just his record. He's going to go for the bigger, better job and the paycheck every time. And he's a great coach. He's a great personality. I think at Alabama there'd be a lot of excitement around him, especially with the success he's had at Ole Miss. I think
he would have fan support at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. And it would depend on the staff he gets at Alabama and whether or not they could succeed.
I think he would probably just bring his staff from Ole Miss.
Probably. And I think it's fun a lot. And I will say this because I've seen it more from Ole Miss fans just because I interact with them more than other teams. But I have seen it from, Mike Norvell's a name that's been tossed around as well. And I've seen it from Florida State fans. Like, any team that says their coach is not leaving, you don't know. This is a job that I think anybody...
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yes, that anybody gets offered, they're at least going to consider this job. And so don't say, Lane's happy at Ole Miss, he's not considering, because that's not true. Dan Lanning at Oregon, you can't say that either. You can't say it about Dabo. You can't say it about Mike Norvell. This is a once-in-a-lifetime job. So if you think Lane Kiffin won't leave Ole Miss for this job, you're wrong. Because he absolutely will, because it'll be more money. You're going to have more resources at Alabama than Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. I don't know what quite the rules on the transfer portal are yet, but I'm assuming there's some guys he could get to come with him to Alabama.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart would probably come with him to Alabama.
So basically, rules on the transfer portal, let's talk about that. For Alabama, there's a 30-day window now where Alabama players can now jump in the portal because the portal technically for all colleges is closed. But since they're just now making a coaching change as of today, there's 30 days where they can get in the portal. So then for whatever team the coach ends up at, Alabama, once that happens, that team will have 30 days to enter the portal. And also, these transfers do not sign a national letter of intent. So technically, they are not at said school that they committed to until they enroll in classes.
Yeah.
So...
Hold on a second. For whatever reason, my MacBook is saying it's Tuesday, and I have text from today that say tomorrow is when they came in. sorry. I've just never seen that before.
But yeah. So, like you said, if I had to put a name that I think is going to be the next coach at Alabama, it would be Lane Kiffin.
That's what I think.
I do think, in a way, that Alabama and just the higher ups, stuff like that, AD, the whole athletic office might be a little weary of Kiffin's personality and the potential distraction it could be at Alabama. But I do think
he's been there before, and he's had success there before as well.
Right, but that was under Saban.
It was under Saban, true, but
and his personality was a little distracting while he was there.
Him being as the top dog there now,
But yeah, I do think that is the most likely.
Yeah, I agree.
Another name, the rest of these names, I really, until I see more smoke, I don't really believe any of these.
I've seen a lot of smoke with Mike Norvell on social media. Some talk show people have already talked about they think he's the best guy for the job just because he's proven he can build a team. And
yeah.
He's a great I think he's the top 3 play caller in college football.
I agree, but I don't see that happening as likely as some of the other names you mentioned.
James Franklin's Alabama's not going to hire James Franklin.
Yeah,
unless they have no other option. So that one's out. I don't think Alabama's going to go.
Kalen DeBoer, maybe he would be a little far down that list, probably. But I do think what he's done at Washington's amazing. But he's another guy that I think might just be happy with his situation currently. He is a guy that is from the North. So that draw to Alabama is not quite as huge as, say, Kiffin, who's been in the Southeast, a Dabo, who's been in the Southeast, Dan Lanning, who's been in the Southeast.
Right.
That draw is not as much there. So I'll be honest, I don't see that one happening, but it could.
Sarkisian.
It's worth mentioning. I
don't see this happening either.
Sarkisian's a no.
He's at a dream situation right now.
Yeah.
I don't think that will happen.
Monetarily and facilities and stuff like that, one of the few that match Alabama in college football would be Texas.
Absolutely.
So I don't see the draw in for him leaving to go to Alabama. I also don't think he would be the best option for Alabama.
Yeah.
Some of these other guys we mentioned would be better. And right now, it's still a lot of preliminary stuff. A lot of people just throwing out names that there's not a lot of factual evidence to any of this. So yeah, I mean, outside of those few, I think it very well could be somebody outside of that, but I just don't know who else it would be.
I don't either. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, timetable-wise, what are we looking at? Maybe 2 weeks until we get You think sooner? I mean, I feel like they should go sooner. But you also know your fan base demands success, and if you don't take your time and make the right hire here, there could be potentially millions of dollars pulled out of your program if you don't have that success right off the bat. So, I mean,
sorry, I'm trying to find some numbers here.
I think a week from now we could know who it is. I know it's going to move quicker than most jobs just because they have the resources that other schools
maybe. It's either going to be quicker than most or longer than most.
Yeah.
To make sure they get the right guy. But here's what I was looking at. So, we talk about Alabama being a national powerhouse, which
they are.
They are, but I wanted to look at their records prior to Saban. The Bear Bryant era into the 80s, there's a stretch there where it looks like the Saban era where they lost more than 2 games once and they lost 3. From 71 to 81, those 10 years, the most they lost was 3 games.
Yep.
They have a 5-6 year in 1984, and then another stretch of 5 years where they only lose 3 games. But so we're looking at after Bryant, those late 90s, early 2000s.
Alabama's not a good
team.
From
1997 to when Saban took over in, I believe,
07.
Was it 07?
06 or 07?
I think it was 06. One of those two.
Did we beat Saban his first year here?
Yes.
I thought we never beat Saban.
Kareem beat Saban Saban's first year.
And that's just to our point. Like, before Saban got here, Mississippi State in the Kroom era was beating Alabama.
Yeah.
So...
1997, they're 4-7. 98, they're 7-5. 99, they win 10 games to go 10-3. 2000, they're 3-8. 2001, they're 7-5. 2002, they once again win 10 games. 2003, they're 4-9. 2004, they're 6-6. 2005, they're 10-2. And then when Saban comes in, somewhere around here, 06, they're 6-7. 07, they're 7-6. And then since 2008, they've
only lost 3 games once.
They've only lost 3 games once, and that was 2010.
Yeah.
They've lost less than 3 games every year since then.
Saban's lost 29 games at Alabama. Has 44 first-round draft picks.
Yeah. So that's crazy. Shows you what Nick Saban was.
Yeah.
But, prior to Nick Saban, between Barry Bryant and Nick Saban, you would see Alabama be a top team, win 10 games, go 10-3. But there were also years they did not have a winning record. So to write off Alabama as being able to perfectly nail this hire and, just pick up where they left off, they very well could. But they could very well kind of come back down to good level where they go 8-4 some years, 7-5 some years, I think. But Alabama fan standards are not going to be there because of the past 16 years under Nick Saban. And that's why I would think that it might be a little bit harder for them to pull the guy they want than a lot of people were originally thinking.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
They're going to get a big fish. I have no doubt in my mind they're going to get a big fish. The question is this guy going to replicate Saban's success? I don't think so.
But
they're still going to be a powerhouse team.
Yeah.
The question is, though, it's a weird situation because, we predicted they'd be the second best team in the SEC behind Georgia next year. Does this mean they drop behind Texas? Do they drop behind Ole Miss? Do they drop behind Missouri even? It
depends on who they get, I think.
Yeah. And who stays and who goes.
Yeah, and then what their roster looks like. It's going to depend a lot on stuff like that. And so...
because there was years where it was Alabama and nobody else in the SEC. There'd be some years where LSU would creep up there. And now the SEC has Texas, has Georgia, has Ole Miss, has Missouri. LSU has Brian Kelly as their head coach. They could go 11 wins
Oklahoma's
next year.
there.
Oklahoma's there. It's a crazy stat conference where even with Saban still at Bama, it's more competitive now than it's ever been.
Right.
And now you don't have a head coach. And if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm a little worried.
Yeah. There is one fan base that has been having a meltdown, even more than Alabama fans, I think, at this point. That's Ole Miss fans. And I would say that's rightfully so. Kiffin came in and gave your program relevancy. And
quickly, too.
Yeah, and I would say I believe he's probably the favorite for the shot.
Yeah,
as of right now, with the information the lack of information that we have,
right,
which is basically none, it's all speculation at this point. So I would say Kiffin's the favorite right now.
Think about another thing that shouldn't matter, but I think in Kiffin's mind it would. He doesn't have to play Ole Miss next year, so he doesn't have to get booed by his previous fan base. I think. When he goes to Tennessee, they're gonna still.
He enjoys it when he goes to Tennessee.
I don't know.
But yeah, we'll see.
It's
right now it's just speculation for all of us. But
watch him hire Urban
Meyer. I've seen that name thrown around, and it's like he's too old. They aren't going that route for a guy that's going to shockingly retire in 3 years.
We're gonna go everywhere.
For medical reasons or whatever he usually says.
That'd be funny.
But yeah, so let us know what you think is going to happen. Give us a hate in the comments. I can take it, but
I can't. So don't.
Yeah. So thanks for watching. Subscribe. We'll keep you posted in some way.
We'll fit shorts, whatever we gotta do.
Shorts probably will be the main way. But yeah,
Praise
crazy
the Lord
day.
and go Dogs, man. Top 5 win. Throwing that out there.
Yes,
I'm happy.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
But,
We'll
yeah.
see you guys in the next one.